what does it truly mean to achieve peak physical condition? We often think of, elite human athletes pushing their bodies to the absolute limit, meticulously tracking everything, right? Every calorie, every minute of rest, every single movement.
Exactly. But what about the animal kingdom? Could a system of conditioning be developed for animals that, well, rivals or maybe even surpasses the precision we apply to humans?
It's a fascinating question, and today we're diving deep into a really specialized realm of animal conditioning, something that pushed the boundaries of its time, and honestly, even now, centuries later, it still offers some pretty profound insights into physiological optimization.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're unpacking the incredibly detailed and, let's be frank, by today's standards, truly intense conditioning methods of a legendary figure named Don Mayfield.
Yeah, and our source is his own writing, Conditioning the Fighting Dog, Don Mayfield's Methods.
It provides this enduring, really comprehensive, and remarkably clear explanation, especially for those, deeply passionate about American Pit Bull Terriers, what were historically known as game dogs, and the meticulous training they went through.
Now, before we go any further, we really need to make something absolutely clear. We're not here to endorse these historical practices. Not at all.
Absolutely not. Our aim is simply to give you, the listener, a complete, unbiased picture of this incredibly intricate system of animal conditioning and its historical context.
We're going to explore Mayfield's unique philosophy, the surprising evolution of his groundbreaking training tools, and the week-by-week, even hour-by-hour protocols he developed. It's a deep dive into an obsessive pursuit of physical perfection.
And get ready for maybe an aha moment, Whether you're curious about animal physiology, historical training techniques, or maybe you just enjoy exploring an incredibly specific and meticulously documented body of knowledge.
Yeah, this isn't just about what he did. It's about why he did it and what he believed it achieved.
Right.
All right, let's peel back the layers and truly unpack this extraordinary journey.
Okay.
So Don Mayfield's journey into conditioning started, well, like a lot of pioneering journeys do, right? With a blend of early, almost accidental success, followed pretty quickly by this profound realization that maybe the conventional wisdom was incomplete.
Right. He talked about his very first dog, conditioned with just basic road work and walk. Simple stuff.
And the outcome.
Against the odds, apparently, that dog showed up as a top-conditioned dog and won its match in, 1 hour and 10 minutes.
Wow. So not just a win, but like a foundational moment for him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because for his second dog, he added a treadmill to the road work and walk.
Like a little upgrade.
Little upgrade. And that dog also performed exceptionally, winning in 1 hour and 15 minutes. But the key insight, the really insightful part here, is how quickly Mayfield grasped something fundamental.
What was that?
He recognized that dogs can be put in shape most any way a person sees fit.
So no single right way.
Precisely. It wasn't a rigid one-size-fits-all approach for him, even right at the start. And this early insight was absolutely crucial. It shattered any preconceived notions he might have had and opened his mind to experimenting, pushing way beyond what everyone else was doing. He saw a malleable system, not a fixed one.
That's a powerful observation, and it really sets the stage for his next big breakthrough, doesn't it? Because these early successes pushed him to look beyond the norm, finding inspiration in, unexpected places,
right,
like the raw efficiency of wild animals.
Right. He was working a job most of the time, apparently, so he was always looking for an easy way to work a dog, something efficient and effective. And he observed wild dogs, big cats, eagles,
Predators,
and he noticed a striking pattern. They make their kill when they're very thin, with no fat whatsoever on them.
Okay, lean and mean, literally.
He called it the kill condition.
Huh.
At that specific point, their blood count is on a natural high, and critically, there's no fat to make them breathe hot.
So they don't overheat as easily?
That was his theory. This is when they are at their sharpest, their absolute peak of physical and mental readiness for survival. But what he also saw was crucial.
What's that?
This peak condition doesn't last forever in nature. Wild animals, they tend to get fat and slow and lazy between kills. They miss after miss until the demands of survival naturally whip them back into shape.
Right, the cycle of nature. Feast and famine, effort and rest.
Exactly. So Mayfield's ultimate goal wasn't just making his dogs fit. It was replicating this natural, lean, sharp, high blood count state.
But doing it systematically.
Doing it systematically in a controlled way, bypassing nature's lazy periods, as he saw them. This wasn't just physical training. It was this profoundly comprehensive and didactic approach, aiming to understand and harness these deep natural principles for intense targeted conditioning.
It implies he was looking for a recipe, right? A formula to kind of engineer peak performance whenever he needed it.
That seems to be the idea.
No. This relentless quest for an easy way for a system to replicate that natural peak that led him directly to one of his most revolutionary tools, the catmill.
He really believed, this was the machine I was looking for. It was the physical manifestation of his philosophy.
And he described seeing an early version, right? Frank Fitzwater's.
Yeah, and by all accounts, it was pretty rudimentary. A big wagon wheel on a hub with a 2x4 sticking out about 12 feet with a chain on it and another 2x4 in front of it with a box attached. Basic stuff.
Doesn't sound too sophisticated.
Not at all. But what's key to understanding the time is the skepticism around it. Frank himself told Mayfield nobody he knew would use one.
Why not?
They were afraid they would half kill their dog and that you could never get the dog to the pit in one piece.
Wow. So what does that fear tell us about the methods people were used to?
It suggests a real resistance to intensive mechanically assisted conditioning. Maybe a lack of understanding of how to use a tool like that without hurting the animal. They were sticking to what they knew.
Which was mostly harnesses and walking, right?
Exactly. He says at that time, every dog man worked dogs with harnesses, Mayfield included, as a newcomer. Mostly because, and I love this quote, it looked good on a dog.
Purely aesthetic.
Pretty much. But Mayfield, with his usual bluntness, says the only place I found to use it is when taking a picture.
That's brutal. But it's a pivotal moment, isn't it? It foreshadows his later shift away from tradition, towards collars, towards pure efficiency.
Absolutely. He was willing to ditch tradition for what actually worked in his view.
So he sees Fitzwater's design, thinks it's outdated.
Right, very outdated. And he immediately sets about improving it. Builds his own, bigger, 20 feet from the center of the track.
But it wasn't smooth sailing initially.
No, definitely not. Even with his improved design, his first experience was a harsh lesson. He said he nearly killed the first dog I worked on it.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's not just a detail. It shows the sheer intensity of the machine and the steep learning curve involved. It highlights his empirical, trial and error approach.
So how did he solve that? That sounds like a major problem.
His solution was really ingenious, actually, very practical. He dug out my track and put a bank 3 feet high on the outside of the track.
A bank? How did that help?
It allowed the dog to run up on the bank when running flat out, but then walk or trot in the bottom when slowing down. It gave the dog a way to control its own intensity, a kind of safety valve.
That is clever, like a banked racetrack.
Sort of, yeah. And he added a drain, too, keep the track surface consistent.
Yeah.
This was critical to making the mill usable.
And did it work? Did he see results?
The validation came fast and pretty dramatically. He won with the first dog worked on this new banked mill. The match lasted 2 hours, 16 minutes, with my dog scratching 27 times and never taking a deep breath or never off his feet.
2 hours, 16. Never off his feet. That's incredible endurance.
Unbelievable. It was a massive testament to the mill's effectiveness in his eyes.
And then there's the story of Fitzwater's Goldie. Tell us about that.
Goldie. Yeah, that story really cements the transformative power Mayfield attributed to his methods. This dog, Goldie, had won for Frank Fitzwater before.
Okay.
But later was labeled a cur and apparently wouldn't fight at 2.5 years old. Basically washed up.
So discarded.
Pretty much. Frank bought him for just $15 because they were literally going to kill him.
$15?
$15.
Well.
Yet Mayfield takes this dog, conditions of his way, and wins with Goldie when the dog was over 7 years old.
7 years old? That's way past prime for most.
Way past. And then Goldie goes on to sire famous dogs like Zeke and Bolio, becoming a foundational stud.
Wow. So what does that tell us?
It dramatically illustrates the impact Mayfield believed his conditioning could have, turning a dog deemed worthless into a champion and a producer of champions. It's a powerful narrative of redemption through conditioning.
It really is. So for 10 years, his cat mill was kind of the gold standard.
It seems so. He said for 10 years, every top conditioner in the game asking me how I worked my dogs, including big names like Leo Kennard and George Sadler. That speaks volumes.
But he wasn't satisfied.
Never satisfied. He described having trouble keeping feet under a dog for that entire decade. He was constantly pushing limits, identifying new areas for refinement, no resting on laurels for him.
Always iterating. So what came next?
Well, his pursuit of improvement was relentless. He tried a treadmill briefly, looking for alternatives.
Okay.
But then, with a welder friend he called Maverick, He built this massive catmill, absolute beast. 57 feet from one side of the track to the other, 28.5 feet from the center on each side.
57 feet across, that's enormous.
Huge. Designed for even more intense, higher speed work. Shows his unwavering belief in the mill's potential.
But thicker wasn't necessarily better initially.
Well, it brought its own challenges. Yes, it improved conditioning, but he was still having trouble keeping feet under the dog. And worse, maybe more alarming, he was knocking out more shoulders than before.
Oh no. Why was that happening?
Because the mill was so big and freewheeling. If a dog ran hard, then slowed down suddenly, the inertia of the mill would go over the dog, pulling the shoulders right out of joint, thus crippling them for a few days.
Ouch. That sounds incredibly intense and potentially devastating. A major setback.
Definitely a major setback. He needed solutions fast.
So what did he do? How did he fix the feet and the shoulder issues?
For the track surface, his solution was remarkably simple, almost earthy. He found the only thing to do was to put hay and let it rot in the track.
Rotten hay.
Yep. Create a good soft track. Natural, effective cushioning against that constant pounding.
Okay, that makes sense. And the shoulders.
The shoulder issue forced a really profound reevaluation. He said it was about the time I found out what a harness was good for, which was, in his view, nothing useful for conditioning or preventing injury.
So he ditched the harnesses completely.
Completely. He made this pivotal, kind of counterintuitive switch to a good, wide working collar.
A collar instead of a harness for that kind of pulling.
Exactly. And he observed it led to dogs with a much stronger neck and a faster mouth. It wasn't just technical. It was a radical departure from what everyone else was doing, showing a deeper understanding, or at least a different theory, of canine biomechanics.
This whole shift, collars, not harnesses, intense mill work instead of long walks, that's revolutionary, right?
Absolutely. It marked a huge change in his entire training philosophy. He basically realized that all the talk I had heard about walk your dog or he would not be in shape was about to become a thing of the past.
Well, he cut the walks way down.
Drastically. He went from walking 2 to 5 miles down to 1 mile with a long rope, eventually getting down to just about 25 yards.
25 yards, that's barely a walk.
Barely. It highlights his core principle. Intensely focused, high-impact work on the mill, not long-duration, lower-intensity walks. Consolidating effort, maximizing output.
And the results backed him up.
Undeniably, according to him. He successfully worked 3, then 5, then even 6 dogs for single shows, with all the dogs showing up in top condition. He says out of 20 dogs worked on his cat mill, only 3 lost.
That's an incredible win rate in that world.
Phenomenal. And it led to widespread adoption. More and more people started getting a cat mill in almost everyone's yard, taking notes on his methods. His keep was being replicated.
Did he learn from others too, or was it all his own innovation?
Oh, he definitely learned from others. He credits other top conditioners. George Sadler, for instance, advised him to work a dog in the same way for 3 days before increasing his work again.
Progressive overload with recovery built in.
Exactly. And Earl Tudor's simple but profound advice. The best thing for a tired dog is rest.
Seems obvious, but maybe easy to forget when you're pushing so hard.
Right. What's fascinating is how these small bits of advice helped him refine his already intense program. They highlighted the importance of observation, smart progression, and timely recovery. Even a pioneer needs external wisdom.
Okay, so we've got Mayfield's philosophy, the evolution of the cat mill. Let's dive into the actual 10-week conditioning program itself. This is where it gets incredibly meticulous.
Yeah, this is where the theory meets intense practice. Mayfield states, flat out, a dog needs 10 weeks of good work to have him ready and fit.
10 weeks. And a key principle for him was...
never go to a vet the entire keep.
Never. Wow. That speaks volumes about his self-reliance, his confidence in his methods, maybe wanting total control over every variable.
Could be all of those. The program starts with this incredibly intensive worming protocol. Shows his commitment to internal purity as the foundation.
How intensive?
First, worming for whips and hooks. 5 days later, for tapes and rounds plus hooks. Then repeat. 5 days later, whips and hooks again. Then 5 days after that, tapes, rounds plus hooks again.
That sounds relentless.
It is. He believed this rigorous schedule should have him clean. Then 1 more worming at 2.5 weeks before the match. Each time giving 3 cc combiotics.
Combiotics, that's an antibiotic, right?
Yeah, a common penicillin-streptomycin combo back then. Used preventatively, likely to knock out any low-grade infections that could compromise the dog during intense training.
So worming and antibiotics right off the bat.
Always done. After you have worked him, then rest him the next day. Fed dry dog chow with castor oil and always fresh water. For Mayfield, internal health wasn't just a baseline, it was the bedrock. Parasites, infections, they drain energy, limit performance. He was leaving nothing to chance.
Makes sense. Beyond internal health, did he have specific physical targets? What should the dog look like?
Oh, definitely. He wasn't just aiming for health, he was sculpting for performance. At pit weight, that optimal fighting weight, lean, powerful, agile,
Right.
the dog should look on this side, meaning lean with no fat showing. But critically, his head should be full with no bone showing.
So lean muscle, good hydration, not starved.
Exactly. Well-fed, but not overweight. Optimal muscle mass and condition.
And then there's the foot care. You mentioned he struggled with feet earlier. His program seems almost obsessive about it.
It really is. It's a testament to the extreme demands of the mill work. He used a mixture. 1 part linseed oil, 1 part turpentine, and 1 part burnt motor oil.
Burnt motor oil, seriously?
Seriously. Painted on the feet every time you take the dog off the mill. It sounds bizarre, but his thinking was likely. Linseed oil for suppleness, turpentine as an antiseptic and toughener, and burnt motor oil for conditioning and protection. A pragmatic, if unusual, blend.
Okay. And that wasn't all.
Nope. Also, Corona ointment or any good antiseptic lubricant in a salve form put on the feet every time you put your dog on the mill and every day afterwards, even a few times a week when he is resting.
Constant attention. Why such obsessive focus on the feet?
Because the feet are the foundation, right?
Like,
without healthy paws, all the conditioning in the world doesn't matter. They take a brutal pounding on that mill.
True. Okay, so health checked, feet prepped. What about the mill work itself? How do you get a dog to do that for hours?
She starts them slow on the mill with a coon and a small wire pin about 2 feet from the dog.
A live coon. Why a coon?
Because according to Mayfield, a coon is not scared of a dog, and they enjoy the ride on the mill and like to tease the dog. It provides an active, engaging, stimulating lure, tapping right into the dog's prey drive.
Okay, makes sense. Then what?
Once the dog is working okay for about 30 minutes, he introduces a milk jug. A 1-gallon plastic jug tied with a good rope from the front arm where the coon is, positioned to bounce just out of reach.
Another lure.
Yeah, keeps the focus locked, maintains drive as the session gets longer. The lure evolves with the dog's conditioning.
And the progression of the work. How fast does it ramp up?
Incredibly fast, almost exponential. Once a dog hits 30 minutes, you jump your dog up 30 minutes every other day till you get him up to 6 hours.
6 hours? That's staggering. Not gradual at all.
Not gradual. Highly aggressive escalation. Designed to build endurance and mental toughness quickly, force rapid adaptation. Shows his belief in pushing limits hard.
Wow. Okay, with that kind of intensity, recovery must be critical. Tell us about the art of the rubdown.
Yeah, this wasn't just a quick pat. It was a precise 30-minute systematic protocol given every time you take him off the mill. Done on a small table, a little over waist high. Very methodical.
What did it involve?
It's a full-body thing, showing a deep understanding of anatomy and circulation. Stand behind, rub front legs, shoulders down, then right hand under the right side up to the front of the left shoulder, pull back down the chest, all the way back to the top right, stifle, high in the gut.
Okay, crossing the body.
Exactly. Same with the other hand to the opposite side. Comprehensive muscle manipulation. Then rub down the back, behind the ears to the tip of the tail, and down the side of the rib cage, always following the hair growth.
Following the grain, so to speak.
Pretty much. Back legs next, top to bottom with the hair. Each area gets about 5 minutes. Thorough. Finally, turn the dog around, rub the head, again, the way the hair grows.
It sounds like more than just a massage.
Oh, it was. It enhanced circulation, muscle elasticity, flushed metabolic waste, built trust, and provided a daily physical check, catching small issues before they blew up. Holistic health and recovery in one ritual.
Incredible detail. Did it stop there?
Nope. There's also precise oral hygiene and external lip care.
Mouth care. Why?
Likely for overall health, preventing infections under stress. He used a mixture. 1 pint water and 2 tablespoons of powdered ammonia alum. Dip fingers, rub the inside of the lips and gums, trying to get it in there with the dog swollen as little as possible.
Alum, that's an astringent, right?
Yeah, antiseptic too. For the outside, rub from the nose to the ear with wet fingers using the alum mixture.
Okay, what about skin and ears?
Skin care involved baby oil every 4th day. Applied lightly, getting the hands wet with oil, then rubbing then dry, covering the dog in oil, keeping away from the eyes, maintain skin suppleness. For ears, once a week, pour about 3 cc's of hydrogen peroxide solution into each ear, then let him shake his head, do the same with rubbing alcohol. Again, uncompromising cleanliness preventing infections.
It's just layer upon layer of meticulous detail. So as the match gets closer, how does the program change?
Critical pre-match adjustments kick in. The last rub down with baby oil happens 5 days before the match. The alum mixture stops 2 days before. And crucially, all work should also stop 5 days before the match.
A 5-day taper.
Exactly. Shifting from building strength to optimizing recovery, ensuring peak readiness.
And this is where his idea of pushing to exhaustion comes in.
Right. This is where you see his understanding of supercompensation: push hard, then rest deeply to peak. In that last week of work, before the 5-day rest, the mill work jumps up to 8 hours, or even 10 hours.
10 hours on the mill. That's unbelievable.
Absolutely grueling, aiming to have the dog tired 5 days in front of his match. And he defines tired not just as sluggish, but seeing them not wanting to run out of the doghouse to meet you.
So extreme controlled exertion followed by critical rest.
Precisely. A controlled overreach followed by a very precise taper to hit that absolute peak.
Okay, so the mill builds endurance. What about other strengths? Did he have specialized workouts?
Oh, yeah. Beyond sheer endurance, he developed workouts for specific attributes. One was jug work, explicitly for grip strength and sustained drive.
Jug work, like the milk jug lure.
Kind of an evolution of it. This starts when the dog is up to about 2 hours on the mill. After the dog's been working for an hour or so, you introduce the plastic jug again, but let the rope out so the dog can actually reach it. Tease him to take a hold of it.
Okay, so now they grab it.
Right. And the jug should not be close to the ground, forcing an upward pull. The dog will start shaking and backing up with the jug, showing its power.
And there's interaction.
Yes. He instructs.
Yeah.
Talk to your dog for around a minute or two, just like you were talking to him in the pit, watching his eyes as he will watch yours. Reinforces the connection, the drive.
And what?
As the dog tires, you never letting any slack in the rope. Keep the tension. The dog will start walking forward to keep him from losing the jug. Constant effort. Eventually, he says, most dogs won't need a coon in front of them, just the jug.
So the jug itself becomes the focus. How often?
30-minute jug work every other day in his work. Letting the jug bounce so he can catch it a few times. Work up to about 1 hour with this jug in his mouth. And this also ends 5 days before the match.
Allowing for that final peak, what other specialized work was there?
Then there's the cable run and coontail work. This aimed at explosive strength, agility, quickness, simulating dynamic, unpredictable movements.
Okay, how is that set up?
It involved a cable run from one tree limb to another if possible, about 300 feet apart. High up, cable 10 feet from the ground. A heavy chain of about 20 feet long hangs down from the cable.
A heavy chain.
Yeah. Swivels at both ends of the chain. A ring for a good leather collar, oiled weekly. The whole setup should be as close to the mill as possible. About 7 to 8 feet would be perfect. Integrated training.
And the dog's housing was part of this.
Absolutely. A good house for your dog with a good shade where he can get cool air and fresh water. Positioned so the chain doesn't hang up. Always have good bedding and a cool shade. Optimal rest and recovery are key.
So how did the coontail work function on this setup?
Done every other day from the jug work. Use a keen tail on a short light pole as a highly motivating, erratic lure.
And the technique?
Start at 5 minutes, work up to 30. Keep the tail low to the ground with the dog at the end of his chain pulling out after the coontail, with the heavy chain and cable pulling him back.
So constant resistance from the chain and cable.
Right. And you go from side to side, making your dog move fast, then slow. Forces quick reactions, changes of direction, maximum effort against resistance.
When was this done?
For 15 minutes before his mill work and for 15 minutes after his mill work. Creates this potent mix of anaerobic and aerobic work, eventually working up to 30 minutes before and after mill work. And this ends 6 days before the match.
So mill for endurance, jug for grip, cable tail for explosive agility. It's incredibly comprehensive.
Absolutely. Not just running, but developing multifaceted strength, agility, and drive, all geared towards that peak performance.
All right, let's shift gears to diet, hydration, and this drawing out process. This sounds like where it gets really into the scientific manipulation of the dog's internal state.
It really does. And it's a testament to Mayfield's relentless pursuit of this enduring, complete, understandable explanation for maximizing performance.
It starts with daily feeding protocols, right? Which sound like a masterclass in precision nutrition.
Definitely. Before each day's work, the dog walks just far enough to get your dog to empty. A walk that gets shorter and shorter over the 10 weeks. Efficiency again.
And then he inspects the results.
Graphically so. After emptying, he instructs you to get a stick and look through this dump. He details how to spot different worms. Blood on the outside wall means whipworms. Blood running through the stool means hookworms. Little white worms coming out, flat-like, are tapeworms.
Wow, using stool as a diagnostic tool.
Keen observation. The stool should always be form, never hard and never loose. After checking, you start walking your dog to the mill, sending him on, just like you would send a dog in a match. Reinforcing purpose, drive.
Okay, what about the actual food? What's in the bowl?
The base is a good high-protein dry feed, about 2 cups. To that, add 1 cup of wheat germ, 1/4 gig of canned mustard greens, a cup of cornbread.
Interesting mix. Carbs, fiber, micronutrients.
Seems like it. And he really emphasizes natural vitamins. Desiccated liver tablets, starting at 5 a day, working up to 15, plus vitamin E, 400 EU, vitamin C, 1,000 milligram, papaya digestive aid, iron with molasses. His instruction, try and have all your vitamins natural vitamins.
Why the focus on natural, do you think?
Hard to say for sure. Maybe an early intuition about bioavailability or just a preference for whole food sources.
Yeah.
The overall goal is to add enough to the dry feed to hold your dog at about 2 pounds over his pit weight.
A slight buffer. Any adjustments near you?
Come out vitamin E 5 days in front of the match. Probably to avoid any blood thinning effects or fine-tune metabolism. And just before feeding, add just about 18 to 1/4 cup of water to wet the feed slightly. Just so it will be wet going down, but dry when it gets to the stomach. Meticulous control over digestion.
Then comes meat, right? 4 weeks out.
Correct. 4 weeks before the match, start adding meat. Good heavy beef, like lamb, cut into small, half-inch square chunks. Must be red, lean meat with all the fat out. Emphasizing protein, minimizing digestive load.
How's it prepared?
Sear the meat in as little as possible and pour this juice over the meat and mix. Searing probably made it more digestible. Preserve nutrients. Start with ½ pound and add up to a ½ pound to 3/4 pound 5 days in front of the match. Progressively increasing protein as training intensifies.
Makes sense metabolically. What about the bone feeding on rest days? That sounds unique.
It is. At least 2 times on your dog's rest day. Give a big joint leg bone from the butcher, boil for 20 minutes, then cooled. You cut your feed in half and give this bone after feeding. Then, next evening, after feeding him half a dude, feeding on his rest day, take the bone away from him. The schedule's precise. Feed half the day before the rest day, give the bone. Feed half on the rest day, take the bone away that evening. This stops about 2.5 weeks before the match.
What was the purpose of the bones? Minerals?
Likely. Natural calcium, phosphorus, minerals for bone density, joint health, vital under that stress. Plus maybe some mental stimulation on rest days.
Water management must be just as precise.
Absolutely. Recognizes its huge role. Fresh water each morning. First 2 weeks, walk the dog till cool after mill work, then let him drink after his rubdown.
Controlled intake initially.
Right. But after those first 2 weeks, put the dog in front of his fresh water and let him drink as much as he wants to until 5 days before the match. The logic. Always feed dry so your dog will drink a lot of water. And always let him drink as soon as he comes off the mill after 2 weeks of work. Also, a tablespoon of raw honey every 3 days over the feed.
Honey for energy.
Likely readily available energy, maybe some antimicrobial properties too.
Okay, now. The salt protocol. This sounds like where it gets really interesting, maybe controversial. Temperament and blood count.
Yeah, this is fascinating. For the first 8 weeks, give ½ a teaspoon of salt 2 times a week, but specifically, in their feed 2 days in a row, then 5 days no salt, then 2 days salt. A specific cycle.
2 days on, 5 days off, and the last dose.
The last salt is to be given 14 days in front of the match.
So 2 weeks out, no more added salt. How did he explain the temperament link?
He offers this really relatable personal experiment. He says essentially, go without salt for 14 days, then eat salt and drink lots of water for 3 days. He claimed his own temperament changed from easy to get along with to a short-tempered, very grip person the closer the 14th day comes around.
Wow, he tested it on himself. Makes his observation about the dogs much more tangible.
Doesn't it? But the core reasoning, as he saw it, was about manipulating the red blood count. He explained it like this. Going without salt makes the body pull away from water, causing dehydration. When that happens, your blood will start to concentrate, as you will get a very high red blood count.
Okay, so dehydration concentrates the blood. What were the supposed benefits?
Twofold, according to Mayfield. First, concentrated blood means more red blood cells to go through the body to the lungs to cool off and back through the body to cool it off. His theory was this keeps the dog from getting hot because the hotter the body gets, the weaker it will get. better oxygen delivery, better thermoregulation.
Enhanced endurance, basically. And the second benefit.
This one's maybe based more on observation. He claimed that when the blood is concentrated, if the dog can get an artery cut, in just a few seconds the bleeding will stop because the blood is so pure it will seal and stop the loss of blood.
Faster clotting, maybe due to higher platelet concentration from dehydration.
Possibly. His physiological explanation might be simplified, but his core observation about saltwater balance impacting blood concentration and performance was remarkably insightful for his time. Modern sports science focuses heavily on hydration and electrolytes, right?
Absolutely. So this drying out, this concentrated high red blood count state, that was the peak he aimed for.
That was the peak. The peak that you must try and reach the last 5 days before the match. A calculated, almost extreme manipulation of physiology, aiming for what he believed was an optimal, self-sealing, hyper-oxygenated state. Empirical optimization at its most intense.
Okay, we've arrived at the final countdown, the last 5 days. This sounds like where the control becomes absolute. Strict confinement, environment control.
Totally. Mayfield says the last 5 days, your dog should be put into a crate and kept in a quiet, cool place. I keep mine in my bedroom. Extreme control. Minimize stimuli, reduce stress, conserve every bit of energy.
What about the crate itself?
Soft bedding, clean, dry hay. Comfort, rest. And crucially, water should be given to your dog by hand and not left in front of him. Precise hydration control. At this point, the dog should be 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds over his pit weight. That buffer for the final drying out.
And the feeding changes dramatically, too.
Yes, precision feeding for the finish. The diet shifts. More red meat and less Purina high protein, and more wheat German cereal. Also start cutting the mustard greens. Emphasizing easily digestible proteins, strategic carbs, minimizing fiber for a lean gut.
What about the very last meals?
The next to last feeding. Not more than a half a cup of Purina high protein, a half a cup of wheat germ cereal, and a half a pound of red lean meat, prepared carefully. Cooked in no water, should be seared on all sides, very rare, cut in 1-inch cubes with all vitamins. Searing locks in moisture, rare for digestibility.
And the final feeding.
Astonishing precision. 26 hours before his match. It's just red, lean beef cut in 1-inch cubes with 3/4 cup of wheat germ cereal with his vitamins. Meat, seared in no water, very rare, but seared on all 4 sides with 2 tablespoons full of honey.
Honey for a final energy boost.
Exactly. Quick, easily assimilated glucose. The overall goal, shift from carbohydrates and protein to protein with just enough to make weight, keep stool firm, avoid weakness. A delicate scientific balance for fight-ready condition. Every calorie counted, every gram controlled.
The walking protocol also shifts drastically in these last days, right? Focus on emptying, then conserving strength.
Absolutely. First 3 of the last 5 days, 4 walks daily. Morning walk, 30 minutes after daybreak. 2 miles in a field with a 15-foot lead rope. Walk slow and empty, taking his time. Gentle elimination, stretching.
And returning.
When heading back, walk behind him with a short laid rope, letting him pull back to the crate as you talk to him, sending him on. That sending him on command reinforces focus, purpose. Same walk again, 1 hour before dark, plus 2 shorter half-mile walks midday and late evening. Controlled, purposeful movement.
Then the last 2 days, big change.
Huge reduction. Still 4 walks, but no longer than 1/4 of a mile in the morning and 1/4 of a mile in the evening. Same 1/4 mile for the 2 walks in between. The crucial instruction, the last 2 days you should never send your dog on making him pull. Try and have him save all the strength he can. Conserve everything. Glycogen stores, mental energy.
What about match day itself?
Precision continues. Final 1/4 mile walk 1 hour before the match. Stretch, calm movement. Then 5 minutes before, a very short walk to empty his kidneys. The ultimate goal, Mayfield says, is to understand fully the peak you are after. Have all the inners empty at match time. No extra weight, no internal distractions.
And the water management to make weight. This sounds incredibly intricate.
It really is. Fine-tuning the body. First 2 of the last 5 days. Give water after his morning walk with a tablespoonful of honey in the water. Let him drink what you think he might need. To make weight, weigh after each walk, water twice a day. Calculated, controlled rehydration.
Then he gets tighter.
Much tighter. Next 2 days, water only 1 time a day. The last water is given precisely 26 hours before the match. The goal, take the water away from him, slow letting his weight drop to right on pit weight. Carefully manage dehydration, reducing water weight, concentrating the blood.
And this is where the environmental controls come in, that shower trick.
Yeah, this is remarkable. On fight day, if the dog starts to drop under his weight, he advises, turn the hot water on in the shower, making the air very wet. As the dog breathes the wet air, his weight will go up.
Absorbing water from the air.
Through respiration, yes. Conversely, if the dog is losing weight too slow, you turn on the air conditioner so the air will be very dry, his weight will start to fall. Dry air promotes water loss via breathing.
That's fascinating. Precise environmental manipulation for weight right down to the minute. An almost unheard of level of micromanagement.
Absolutely. And all these steps, the mill, the rubdowns, the diet, the salt, the final countdown, they all lead to Mayfield's ultimate goal, achieving a state he describes quite simply as a thing of beauty.
Beyond just function and aesthetic ideal.
Exactly. He says, to understand condition and to see a body put into the best condition possible is a thing of beauty.
And he brings back that eagle analogy to explain it, doesn't he?
He does. Connects it back to nature's raw efficiency. To achieve this peak, you've got to try and get as close to nature as you can, mirroring the eagle scoring the blue skies, feeling the pain of hunger. Then when it sees prey, he dives from instincts traveling at his top speed, turning, sweeping down to killing a rabbit.
That's the blueprint for the power he sought. Explosive, adaptable, sustained.
That, for Mayfield, is condition. This is condition. This is survival. Your body must stay as close to its peak or you will not survive. The final goal, the true meaning for him, is to see every part of the body at its peak. That is what you are after when you get a dog ready to fight for life or death. It's raw, primal, engineered readiness.
And he circles back at the end, reinforcing the core wisdom he learned.
Right back to those two small bits of advice from two of the top dogmen. Increase the work and rest the tired dog.
Yeah.
Seemingly simple truths, but for Mayfield, they were the pillars his whole elaborate system rested on, the essential rhythm of push and recovery.
But it's not just knowing that, is it?
No. He stresses you must understand what a tired dog looks like when he is overworked and needs a day of rest. It emphasizes astute observation, intuitive judgment, listening to the dog's body, knowing precisely when to push, when to recover, being an expert guide, not just a taskmaster.
We've just completed a really profound deep dive into Don Mayfield's legendary Keep, a regimen just meticulously designed to push these dogs to an unparalleled level of conditioning.
From the custom mills, the precise rubdowns, the intricate salt and feeding protocols, those minute-by-minute environmental tweaks, it's a testament to an obsessive pursuit of physical perfection.
All aimed at providing this enduring, complete, and remarkably clear explanation for anyone passionate about these animals and their historical training.
What really stood out to you in all this? Was it the empirical reasoning Mayfield used for the salt and hydration? That almost philosophical connection to wild animals?
Or maybe just the sheer dedication, right? The minute level precision required to even attempt such a program. It feels almost alchemical, his approach to physiology.
Yeah, and the source material describes condition as that thing of beauty found in nature's survival. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Yeah. About that fine line between pushing limits and respecting natural processes.
And how much human intervention can truly replicate or maybe even surpass nature's own design for peak performance. Think about what that implies for any form of intense training, human or animal. That relentless, almost spiritual pursuit of ultimate physical readiness.